A3, 40 for A3 on the right side. Itma. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua Balevi. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua Balevi were arguing about the Arava. Charama Arava Yisod Nevi'im. One said that the Arava was a Yisod Nevi'im, means an institute, something that instituted by the prophets, which would mean that it's an enactment like other enactments. And Rashi says if it's an enactment, a takana, then just like the rabbis instituted the mitzvah of Hanukkah and Purim, you would have to say a bracha. They would have to say bracha prior to them taking the Arava, like other rabbinic laws. The rabbis say you light the ladies light the candles erev Shabbat. Really, if the lady's not home for Shabbat, she's caught somewhere, the man lights also candles. If the lady, it's a mitzvah of lighting candles for Shabbat. There should be Shabbat candles in the house, and it's a rabbinic mitzvah. And even though it's a rabbinic mitzvah, we have a bracha on the mitzvah. Why is there bracha on the mitzvah? If it's a rabbinic mitzvah, we say, because the pasuk we say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu mitzvotav v'tzivonu. You commanded us. How did you command? But God never commanded us the mitzvah of Hanukkah. Hashem never told us the mitzvah of Purim. So how can we say a bracha v'tzivonu when you commanded us? Because the Torah says, lo tosur, don't turn away from what the rabbis tell you. So therefore, in that sense, you are following what God said by following the enactment of the rabbis. So therefore, the Gemara says it's appropriate for you. It's appropriate to say the word v'tzivonu. You've commanded us. But however, there's another opinion in the Gemara that says this Arava. Now, by the way, until now, we've said that Arava is halacha. Good morning, Simon. Halacha la Moshe Sinai. Well, we said it's a biblical origin, not a rabbinic origin. So that's what the Gemara is going to challenge this statement, because the statement on the surface seems very odd with everything until what we said until now. Correct, David? So that's what the Gemara is going to challenge. But we're going to see what the statement says. But the Gemara will analyze it and explain and clarify the issue. Itma Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yeshua Balevi. Charama Arava Yisod Nevi'im. One says this was instituted by the late Nevi'im, the late prophets. Good morning. If you want, you could use a Gemara, or you. Thank you again for joining 2 days in a row. It's our foot. Okay. Right. We're happy that you're here. We're happy that you're here. Now, remind me if you remind me your name again. Amnon. Okay. Oh, very good. Yes. Now, I know he's a good friend with Rafi also. Yeah. Oh, very good. Okay, beautiful. So Charama, the mitzvah Rava, David, you're starting a minyan in your office too, I hope so. So you know what, in life, you know what I say? But David, in life, I always say to some of my students, exactly. I say there's certain things in life you got to think about. You know what I mean? But then there's certain things in life there's nothing to think about. That's what I would think. You know what I'm saying, David? So if you broke. So what's the problem? Mark, we're on the Zoom. We welcome Mark Asbury. Mark, I got a job for Mark. Mark, you hear that?
Yes, what's that?
The job is that you are going to Be'ezrat Hashem encourage David Cohen. His brother wants to start a minyan in the office, and he just needs a little encouragement from Mincha. So I'm going to ask you to do that encouragement, Mark. Okay?
You got it.
Okay, David, we got you now. All right, this is called, in life, there's something called kosher pressure, kosher encouragement, right? Okay.
That's easy. Give me something hard to do.
Okay, that's very good. Mark, I hear you. Okay.
That's easy.
I'll tell you like this, Mark. It says, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. So once you do this mitzvah, it's going to lead to other opportunities of mitzvah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, Itma, Rabbi Yochanan,
I
Rabbi
thought
Yisrael.
I thought you were gonna tell me get Joey Cohen to the class, and I was gonna decline that request.
So we're gonna encourage.
We're not ready for that one yet.
Okay, all right, we're gonna get there. Bezrat Hashem, we're gonna get there.
Little by
Okay,
little.
Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel Levi. So here, Mark, we just introduced a new piece of Gemara. I mean, we're still continuing the Rava, and we have a dispute among the rabbis who instituted the Rava. It's apparently a new. Now, remember, these are later rabbis that are discussing this issue. Rabbi Yochanan, one says Chanama Rava Yisod Neviim. One says that Rava was instituted by the prophets. Chagai, Malachi, Zechariah, they instituted this mitzvah of Rava. Of course, the Gemara is going to challenge this, because we all know until now we said it came way before the prophets. It came from Sinai. And Charama Arava Minhag Nevi'im. Minhag Nevi'im means it wasn't a complete enactment, obligation, takana. Rather, the prophets told the people to conduct themselves this way, but they didn't give it the stamp and the strength of an enactment. Right. So the difference is, the Gemara says, the difference would be whether you would say, Rashi says, whether you would say a bracha on such a act. If they made a takana, they said, we're instituting this type of obligation, so then you would say a bracha. Rabbinic, when the rabbis make a takana, like we said, Chanukah, Purim, you say a bracha. But if it's they didn't make an official, it's just like a rabbi of a shul, the rabbis of the community, we should conduct ourselves this way. But they didn't give it in the strength of an enactment, so then it would be a minhag. It would be a custom, which we keep customs. Customs is very important, but it will not be the same strength of an enactment, and therefore will not get a bracha. That is Rashi. Some explain minhag nevi'im means that the prophets on their own, they did it. They did not obligate the masses, the community, to do it, but the people on their own wanted to follow what the Nevi'im did, what the prophets did. You see Rabbi Vati Yosef do something, you want to follow. It wasn't something that was an obligation for the community, but the community conducted themselves following what the Nevi'im, what the prophets did. That's the second shot, which is, you see the great difference between the first and the second. The first was enacted for the community, and the second was just the prophets did it, but the community just followed on their own. Such a beautiful community, they followed on their own what the prophets did. Those are the two understandings of what the without a bracha. Because if the prophets did it, if it's not an act, they did it without a bracha, and then the people continue just to follow the way the prophets did it. They took the arava. That is the second. That's another approach. Now comes the Gemara, and the Gemara says to stayim. Now we don't have the Gemara records a difference of two rabbis, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shmuel Levi. One says this and one says that, but we didn't identify who was the one that said this and who was the one that said that. It's like David said this and Mark said this, but we didn't say who said. We said one said this, but we didn't identify who was the author of this statement. Now the Gemara wants to prove who said what. There's a lot of practicality, ramifications of understanding who says what. And if you could show that Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said this opinion, or then you will know who the law follows, because we have certain rules. Let's say when there's an argument between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, the law generally follows Rabbi Yochanan. So it must probably there are laws where Rabbi Yochanan is arguing Rabbi Shmuel Levi. So if you can identify who's the author of which statement fits which one, then you'll know how to follow in law. So the Gemara says, Tistayim, let us prove the Rabbi Yochanan, let us clarify the Rabbi Yochanan who the Amar. Rabbi Yochanan is the rabbi who said Yisod Nevi'im. He said that it was an enactment by the prophets. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Avu said in Rabbi Yochanan, Arava Yisod Nevi'im. Because we have him on record that says that it's Yisod Nevi'im. It's an enactment of the prophets. Okay, we're going to see Now in halacha, we don't make a bracha on the rava, but we're gonna have to see what is this referring to? What is this law of, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, that the mitzvah arava on the holiday of Sukkot is an enactment, a rabbinic enactment. Now the Gemara first proves to staying. We proved Rabbi Yochanan is the author of that opinion. Yes. No, the arava is the arava, the hoshanot, the arava that you take independent of the lulav and the arava and the arba minim. The Torah says arvei nachal. So there is no question about the rava in the dal minim. But here the question is the rava, the hashanot, the separate hashanot that we take on Sukkot. The recording here is the discussing that arava, but the Gemara is going to jump on them. How could that be? Amalei Rav Zera Rabbi Avoho. Rav Zera says to Rabbi Avoho, Mi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Did Rabbi Yochanan say that the arava, those hashanot that we take, that we're on 44A4? Did he say that it's a minha? It's a takana reviyim? But we know V'amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Nechunya Ish Bikat Beit Choratan. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Nechunya that Esen Etiyot. We spoke about the 10 saplings of young trees. We said that there's a halach, even though we said that when the Shemitah year comes, not only you can't plow during the year of Shemitah, you can't plow 30 days before. But when it comes to the young saplings, as David said, the halacha Moshe Mishnah says you're allowed to plow those young trees within 30 days of Shemitah. So and arava. And one of the things that they list as part of the halacha Moshe is arava, taking the arava in the Beit Hamikdash, and nisach hamayim, pouring the water on the mizbeach on the mizbeach during the holiday of Sukkot. These are all halacha Moshe Mishnah. These are all halacha Moshe. So how could you say? Not the prophet, which came many years later. This is from Hashem to Moshe, from Sinai. So what do you mean enactment? A rabbinic enactment has a rabbinic law. Something from Sinai is Torah law. So how could Rabbi Yochanan say what he said? So the rabbi Rabbi Vohu ishtomam kishachata. Rabbi Vohu was quiet for a small amount of time. Why was he quiet? Because he was thinking what to answer the question. Sometimes the rabbi got to think a little bit. Sometimes in general, there's a concept of the shinantam levanecha. We say in the Shema, you should teach your children, your students, and there's a shinantam also means to be sharp. If a person asks you a question, you should be able to answer right away. But there are certain questions that sometimes need a little bit, a little more thinking. So he was thinking about this, and then he says, "Aman," and he came up with an answer to explain the apparent contradiction. He said, "Of course, it's a halacha from Sinai to take that rava, but you know what happened? Most probably shekachum. Most probably the people forgot it when they went to exile. Maybe they forgot." When you're not in the Holy Land, they were thrown out of the Holy Land. They went to exile to Bavel, into Babylon, and maybe perhaps they forgot this law, and therefore, since they forgot the law, now when they came back to the building, very good. The Gemara is gonna say very good. We're gonna see that that's what the Gemara is gonna shoot back. So Amnon got the Gemara's. But the Gemara is suggesting that as a result of Galut, when you're exiled, you leave the home, you leave the country, the confusion of people being uprooted from their place could cause the loss of knowledge of Torah, and therefore v'chazu v'yasadum. And then the Nevi'im came back and they said, and the prophet says, you know what? This is a mitzvah that you got to do. You got to go ahead and take that rava in the Beit HaMikdash. Again, this is not written in the Torah anywhere, right? There's no mitzvah, according to most opinions, and even the opinion says arvei nachal. It's not clear that it means that it's referring to this arava, and you need the rabbi's explanation, and therefore it could have gotten lost in, like I say, lost in the shuffle. The Gemara is suggesting that maybe it got lost through the exile, and therefore you need the rabbis. Morning, Mark. You need the rabbis just to go ahead and and remind them and enact it again to tell the people that's what you got to do. The Yisadum, and they went ahead and they reinstituted that it is halacha al Moshe Sinai, and therefore that's why it's referred to as Yisod Nevi'im, when it's referred to as something that was an enactment of the rabbi of the prophets. Not that they were the original people created that law, but they brought it back because maybe it got lost in the shuffle. So the Gemara says no. It doesn't seem like that Rabbi Yochanan held that opinion. Like Amnon said, when the rabbis went into exile, when the Jews went into exile, as we learned in the Megillat Esther, Mordechai went earlier. Other rabbis, the Talmidei Chachamim, the scholars left Israel earlier, before the destruction, and the Torah, and those scholars, they kept the Torah going in Bavel. And if you see, Bavel became, we're learning Talmud Bavel. This is the Babylonian Talmud. This is from the great rabbis of Bavel. There's something called the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, which is rabbis focused more on rabbis from Israel. Rabbi Yochanan said to his students, here you have Rabbi Yochanan in the Holy Land. As you know, you had, just like today in America, you got New York and Israel, or America and Israel. Some people think New York is America, the whole America is New York, but you got America and you have Israel. You have two great centers of Torah in the world. So they had two great centers of Torah in post the second Beit HaMikdash. You had Israel. Rabbi Yochanan was the leading rabbi, one of the leading rabbis, and you had Bavel. You had all the great rabbis that were learning about in the Gemara, Abaye, Rava, Rav Kahana, all the other rabbis. And Rabbi Yochanan says to his students, here he is in Eretz Yisrael, he's giving a class to his students, and he says, you know what? There was a Rabbi Kahana. Rabbi Kahana came, not Rabbi Meir Kahana, Rabbi Kahana that came to Eretz Yisrael. He was from Bavel. He left Bavel. He had to go to Israel. When he came to Israel, Rabbi Yochanan said, wow, Rabbi Yochanan had certain questions. The rabbi, sometimes even himself might have a question. And you know what? Rav Kahana was so sharp, he was able to help him out in answering the questions. So, Rabbi Yochanan says to his students, the Lechun Amri, I thought you students here in Eretz Yisrael, in the Holy Land, that, when the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, as you know, not everybody left Israel. Many Jews remained in Israel, and many people had gone to Bavel. And I thought that you in Israel, since you never were uprooted from Israel, you were in a better position of understanding and knowledge, and you were sharper, greater knowledge than the people in Bavel. But now I see the Lohom. I see really the Torah in Bavel is stronger, because look at such a Rav Kahana, and he is so sharp, and he has and obviously sharpness is not just brilliance, it's with knowledge that he amassed also in Bavel. So we see that it doesn't seem like they should have forgotten anything, like Amnon was saying. So therefore, how could you say that, how could you suggest that really it was, they knew it, they forgot it. In Bavel, they didn't forget it. So the Gemara says, lo kasha. It's not a question. Why not? Now we're turning the page on 44b. 44a4. Sinaitic law means Sinai law. From Sinai, from Moshe, from God to Moshe, from Sinai, because they're just a fancy English term for Sinai. Now, so the Gemara says, "Kan the Mikdash, kan bigvulin." So the Gemara says, here we have an explanation. How do we explain it? The case is two different cases. That which we said was halacha l'Moshe Sinai was in the Mikdash. In the Mikdash, as we spoke about, they took the Arava, they went around the altar, they stuck it on the side of the altar. That was halacha, that was a Torah law from Sinai. But there is according to Rabbi Yochanan, the rabbis enacted that outside of the Mikdash, let's say which would be during the second Beit HaMikdash, because that's when these prophets lived in the beginning of the second Beit HaMikdash, Chagai Malachi Zachariah, that they enacted, this is how Rabbeinu Hanana learns the Gemara, they enacted that outside the Beit HaMikdash, the people should also take an arava. And that would be what do you say? The prophets. What do you say? According to this opinion, it would be with a bracha that the rabbis, at least during the time of the right, it's not a minhag. It's not a minhag of the prophets. It's a takana, a yesod nevim, according to this opinion. So that would mean in the time of the Beit HaMikdash that there was a takana, it was instituted that they should go ahead and everybody, in addition to the people in Mikdash that would take the arava, everybody should go ahead and take the arava outside the Beit HaMikdash as well. So therefore, there's no contradiction. Okay. Amar Rav Ami. Okay, Amar Rav Ami. Rav Ami says the following. Arava Sricha Shia. We've been talking about the arava. What are some of the laws and the requirements for an arava to be kosher for the Hoshanot? So he says, number one, Sricha Shia. It has to have a certain size. What we do. Okay, so what we did, we call Hashanat arava. Today we're remembering. No, it doesn't mean that because really you'll see that we do 5, but some say you only take 3. I think the Arizal says you take 5, but here when the Gemara is discussing the question now, but this would apply to again. Now the question would apply to us, what the size of the Hashanas will be by us. And it could well be that that's also what it needed to be over there. Meaning the Gemara is now saying, what are some of the laws of the Arava? And it doesn't mean that necessarily there'll be a difference between us and the Mikdash. I presume the Gemara is saying, in general, what is the basic law of Arava in the Mikdash and for here. It should be the same. Okay. Arava, number one, Sricha Shir. It requires a certain size. By a lulav, we know that it has to have a certain size, and we know a lulav has to be 4 tvachim, a rav has to be 3 tvachim. Like a rav has to be a minimum of 11 inches long for a rava. You can't cut. If you cut, you have to be careful. Sometimes people cut their ravot a little short. It could always be high, be longer, but it can't be too. There's a minimum size for the rava. So here, the Gemara Rashi says the Gemara is going to explain what is this shear, what is this size? Is it referring to the length of the arava, right? A minimum length that we know there is a minimum length of a regular arava that's part of the lulav. So is this what we're referring to? So we'll see. But arava needs a certain size. What do you say?
Because in lulav, is that lulav?
Because in the Beit HaMikdash, they use very long aravot. They use very long aravot. So there are some people. That's why if you notice, our arava is longer. When we do the Hashanot, it's longer than our typical arava. Correct? That's what you're saying, Amnon, right? For the Hashanot, for the arava, they use long ones, right? Because that's symbolic of how they did in the Beit HaMikdash. But you don't need to have that type of length, to 10-foot rava, or I'm exaggerating a little bit. You know what I mean?
I see all the time in the book. Sure, it's so big, so why?
Right. Because you're going to see them. I don't know if you have to come to Manhattan. You have to go to the Beit Midrash. How do you like that, Mark? But you'll see, because they had it in the Beit HaMikdash. We're going to get to, if you're going to be here, we'll see. It was tremendous. It was like 11 amot high. It could be over 15 feet high by the Beit HaMikdash. So therefore, that's why people are trying to do that. So the Gemara says, if it ain't now, that's halacha number one. It has a certain size. Stay tuned to what the size is. Halacha number 2 is ve'ena nitelet el b'fnei atzma. You cannot take it together with something else. What does that mean? Rashi says, don't tie it with something else. It needs to be clear that you're taking the arava for the mitzvah, that it's separately and independent for a mitzvah. Not that I go ahead and I want to take this arava and I'll put it together with some other item and wrap it together, tie it together. You just take it by itself. Okay, well, lulav, that also right. That you could say that as well. If you tie it together with the lulav, people are not going to know that you're doing it for the mitzvah. Let's say a guy is going to throw in some extra aravot, right? A person going to tie extra aravot to the lulav. People are not going to know that it's specifically for this. So you cannot. You have to go ahead and morning everybody, morning Ariel, morning. You have to go ahead and take the arava by itself. We're talking about the arava. Just to bring everybody up to date, we're talking about Hoshanot, arava. We have the arava with the lulav, and then we take the arava separately. So here you have to take the arava separately. Don't take it with something else. The third thing is the ein adam yotzei yidei chavato b'arava shebelulav. The fact that you have a lulav and hadasim and aravot, the person should not say that, you know what, I could fulfill my obligation with the arava of my lulav. I gotta go ahead and I have to have a separate mitzvah of arava. A person can't say, you know what, I'm taking my lulav right now. I have my hadassim and aravot, so I'll have in mind with my lulav that I'm doing hadas aravot and the etrog, I'll have in mind also for this mitzvah that they did in the mikdash of the arava. No good. You can't fulfill your mitzvah through the arava of the lulav. And the Gemara is going to explain more about this statement, because the Gemara is going to challenge this third statement. What do you mean when you say, "Good morning, Adam"?
Good morning.
Welcome. What do you mean that with the arava you cannot fulfill your obligation by using the arava that you have in the lulav? Once you told me that you have to take that arava by itself, right? The Rabbi, Rav Ami, said 3 laws, 3 statements. Halacha number 1, he said, morning, Mr. Haber. Halacha number 1, he said that the arava requires a size. That was halacha number 1. So we have no question on that. The only question we're going to have is identify the size. But it's not, there's no, we don't have any contradiction. But the Gemara or a real question on the redundancy of the statement. There's nothing redundant in the statement. But a rabbi, if you're saying 3 laws, that means law number 3 is independent of law number 2. If law number 3 is obvious because of law number 2, you don't have to tell me law number 3. So that's what the Gemara is saying. Once you told me law number 2, that you have to take the arava, the Hoshanot, by itself. So of course you can't fulfill your mitzvah with the arava when it's tied to the lulav. So what do you need to tell me? That you know what? You can't fulfill your mitzvah with that arava that's tied to the lulav. You just told me a minute before they have to take that arava by itself. So that obvious, that means. Right, but exactly. But once you told me you told me halacha number 2, you have to take that arava by itself. That arava cannot be tied to something else. Oh, okay. Oh, very good. Okay. Okay. But the very right, but
don't do it.
Okay, very good. So we're going to see what if the Gemara is going to say what you're saying or not. But the point, the Gemara's question at this point is, you told me you have to take it by itself, so automatically you can't take it as part of the set of the lulav together while it's tied to the lulav. Right. So that's what the Gemara says. Kivan the amama. Since the master said, the rabbi said, you have to take that rava by itself. So pshita, it's obvious the ein adam yosef rava shebululav. So it's obvious you can't fulfill the obligation with that rava that's connected to the lulav. So the Gemara says, listen to what the Amnon, you'll hear other suggestions the Gemara will see. And he said, Ma'odetema, Hani Mili, maybe that, you know what that's talking about? when you go ahead and you take the lulav and the hadassim and the aravot, and then you at one time you take it once. But what about if you pick up the aravah, the hadassim, and the aravot for the lulav, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it down and pick it up again for the mitzvah of aravah. So you might have. So the Gemara says. It would see together. So you might have said, "Man, honey mile, when do we say? When do we say when do we say you cannot fulfill your mitzvah? That has to be separate. Separate means that if you want to go ahead and take it with the lulav as part of the mitzvah while it's in the lulav and do a one-time pickup and say, I'm going to get credit for the mitzvah of lulav and get credit for the remembrance of the ravah, that I can't do. But however, but if I went ahead and I picked up the lulav for the mitzvah of lulav, right? That's our vote. Good morning, Stephen. And then I went and I put the lulav down. And then I went ahead and I picked it back up. So now I picked it up specifically for the mitzvah of aravah. So I might have thought that maybe the only thing that you told me that I can't do, if I want to do it all at one time with the lulav and the hadassim together, tied together, that I can't do. Well, what about? Good morning, Jaime. Right. The Gemara said. Right. Good morning. Yes, because the way Rashi explains the following. What would I have thought the reason is? I can't take. But if I tell you that I have to take it by itself, how would I have understood that statement? I would understand the statement like this. When we take that ravah, we're talking everybody about that ravah that we take independent of the lulav, the oshano. It has to be seen that I'm doing it for the mitzvah of aravah. And if it's alone, I'm doing it for that mitzvah. And if I'm taking it in a way, if I pick up that ravah in a way that it's not clear that I'm doing it for the mitzvah of aravah, that I don't get credit. So the Gemara is thinking that if I went ahead and I picked up the lulav first with the intention of the mitzvah of lulav, and then I put it down, and then I re-pick it up again. Why am I re-picking it up again? I already went ahead and I took the lulav 5 minutes ago with the etrog, and I went ahead and I took it for the mitzvah. I said a bracha on the lulav. So it was clear it's clear that I did the mitzvah of lulav. I finished the mitzvah of lulav, but I put it down. And then I went in and I pick it up again. I picked the lulav up with the hadassim and the aravot tied to it. So I might have thought that maybe in this case, when I re-picked it up, so maybe that's considered enough of a recognition that I'm doing it for the mitzvah. He says, why? Because it's clear. There's some clarity. No, but the clear, why you couldn't do it with the first statement that says that you should do it, meaning when I say do it independent, I would understand to say, because if I leave it, if I do it with as part of the love, it's not clear that I'm doing. If I have that in mind, if I have in mind when I take a lulav which has hadassim and aravot tied to it, I have in mind both things. I have in mind I want to do the mitzvah of lulav. If I want to have in mind I want to get credit for the aravah, it's not clear in the action that I'm doing.
Anything? Anything?
But the Gemara, but the Gemara is very good. But the question is, how do we understand that statement? That you have to take that ravah by itself. Could be understood. You could understand that to mean, meaning it's what's the issue of what does it mean take it by itself? That means because it's not recognizable when you do it as part of the lulav. But if you put it down and you re-pick it up, that you might not have known that that will be a problem, because that might be considered in a certain sense as if you took it by itself, in the sense that it's clear that you're doing it for the mitzvah of the aravah. But that many say you could do. If you go ahead and you would take the aravah out from the lulav, and then you take it separately, that's no problem according to most opinions. But if once the chidush is that once it's tied to the lulav, even if you went ahead and you took the lulav and you put it down and you re-picked it up with the intention and want to have in mind the mitzvah of Hashanah, of the aravah, it's still no good. It has to be totally separate. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. It's good to have everybody on the screen and in person. Always, and want to wish everyone a beautiful day. Thank you all. Good to see everybody. Very good. Thank you. Good to see you, Jaime. Every minute counts.